Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich. Welcome to our program. So good to have all of you with us here today. And my very first task on this, which is really not a task at all, it's my pure pleasure to introduce all of you to my radio colleague and co-host for so many years, but more importantly, my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Hello, Ratanjit. How are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. And want to let all of our listeners know, however you may be listening to us or watching us, perhaps on a replay on our YouTube channel, which is Stress-Free Living Radio. You can do a search on that. We have, at this point, over 70 shows that have been there, and we have many, many other ones that we would like to get added to that. But 70 is a pretty good start. You can check us out on that. We also want to let all of you know that you can join us on our Zoom call live. Right now, we're looking at a screen full of wonderful people joining us from all over the world. And we love interacting with them, especially before we start, during the breaks, and afterwards. We kind of continue with the post show. So you're all invited to be part of our special group. If you'd like to do that, contact us, and we'll be happy to give you that Zoom link. Ratanjit, last week, we had the title of the show, How to Slow the World Down. And I was really excited to talk about that. And somehow or other, for the entire program, we had a series of other little conversations, interesting things. I think it was a worthwhile effort to get together and talk, and hopefully people found it valuable. But we really didn't address the issue. And so after listening to the show, I said, boy, I think we need to revisit this one more time and do what we say we're going to do, which is figure out how to slow the world down. What it did give us an opportunity over this week is to engage in other people and ask other folks what they think about this topic. And so I'm excited that we not only can get back to the original title between you and me and the original topic, but also we can filter in some of the feedback that we have received from our guests, and even some this morning before we started. But let's go back to the basic topic, Ratanjit. Is it possible? We know we can't slow the world. Scientifically, it is always going to spin at that same pace. So we're not talking about slowing the world as much as slowing our presence in the world, slowing our reaction to the world, our viability in the world. Is that even possible? I mean, are we living at such a pace in this era of technology and lifestyle? Are we living at just such a pace that we can't really slow it down on a sustained basis?
The main thing is we have to understand and realize that we have knowledge of slowing down the world. They are telling us do meditation, do proper breathing, and do stay in the present, and all these things will actually help us slow down the world. But these are basically knowledge. And we are living our life not by knowledge. We talk about the knowledge. We express our knowledge. We write about it. We write books about it. But we live our habits. Somehow, right from childhood, we are constantly put into the fast pace. Come on, let's finish it. Let's do this. And we have to go attend this conference. We have to go play tennis. We have to do this. We have to finish our work. So constantly we are putting a young human into habit pattern, which stays with our life. So generally they say that of what we have learned, whatever your habits are before you're 6, stay your lifelong. So we are into a habit of constantly hurrying and constantly looking for the second thing. What we have in hand is not as important what is going to happen. What simple thing is, when we eat, we don't think about food, we put things in our mouth. We are thinking something else. We are talking with our friends. We generally have a dinner meeting where it is not about the dinner, it is all about the talk and the topic. And food is basically something we put in our mouth and automatically we choose. Same thing we do with our constant day-to-day work. When we drive from one place to another, we are not even aware of driving. We are not even aware of the street we pass. We constantly thinking of something else. So this is how we have trained our brain. So as a consequence of that, we basically do not exist in the present. We stay always in the past or in the future. And as a consequence of that, life appears to go very fast. Life is going at the same speed. Time is still, minute is 60 seconds, but we don't live every second of every minute. We are not present in every second of every minute. So basically, this is our habits. Until we change our habit, knowing that we have to change our habit, fortunately, habits can be changed. Ray?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand exactly how you express that, and I think I've got it. So I'm going to retell it back and tell me if I'm right. If instead of living in the present knowledgeably, instead of taking it all in and understanding it and seeing it and comparing what's happening to what we know knowledge-wise should be happening and how we should act, our present is displaced, our actions for our present is displaced mostly by our habits, doing things automatically and not really thinking them through. And so if that's the case, when we're in that habit mode and we're not really using our brain to function for the present, our brain goes elsewhere. Our brain dwells on the past. Our brain dwells on what we should have done, could have done, didn't do. Our brain also goes to the future. I'm worried about what's going to happen when I get to work. I'm worried about what's going to happen with the sickness in my family. I'm thinking about all these what ifs and how that's going to be and how I'm going to have to handle that and cope with that. So I put the habits into play in my present. I don't give that the time that it deserves, the real time. I don't give that the focus of my brain that I should. So I'm kind of wasting the time, wasting my brain, replaying the past and worrying about the future. Is that a fair assessment of what you said?
Yes, that is very true. Now, the thing is this, supposing you had an accident and suddenly it was a very bad accident. When you go to the hospital, the doctor said that your survival possibility are less than 1%. So suddenly there is a miracle drug or miracle procedure or miracle thing which is somehow saved your life. So now you are given a new life. So one thing it is, you can enjoy, you can be happy, you can be celebrating, but what should come in us is the feeling of gratitude that I have been given a new life. And how you experience that new life by noticing every breath coming out of you, every breath you take. So one of the best way to remain in the present mode is to begin to form a habit of being grateful for every breath we take. We do not even notice the breath we take. So automatically, it is the best thing for your health once you take proper breath. Breathing improves. You take deep breath and long breath, and constantly notice that every breath indicates that you have life in you. You are still alive. And that is a gift which is given to you. You do not have a contract. You do not have basically a right. It is all a gift. So once your mind remains in this utter gratefulness, you bring within you a very positive energy. And you begin to notice small things in life and begin to take pleasure. When you see some beautiful rose, appreciating the beauty of the rose, you also begin to appreciate the capability given to this human body to visualize, to able to see. So again, you become grateful for the eyesight, and then you become grateful for the feeling you have within you. You begin to appreciate all the things which are gifted to you and which ultimately slows down the world. You begin to live in the present, right?
Ratanjit, you have already just put so many things into a box, and I want to unwrap that box and take them out one by one, because there's so many gifts that you have just shared with us. And a lot of this isn't new. I mean, a lot of this is, as you said, living in the present is, is a solution that everybody says, just live in the present and you're so much better off. The meditation, the reflection, all of those things that you've thrown out here, but I feel you're giving this a different, the total approach here that you've presented to us is different in its totality. And I think that's the beauty of what we're talking about. So if you don't mind, I'd like to dissect it here a little bit more so that we can really understand what you're saying and do it, not just be enamored by the words, but actually say, okay, I've got to do this. So I do want to talk about gratitude and taking pleasure in the little things. We'll get there. The positive energy, that's awesome. But I want to go back a little bit to that first concept that you gave so that we truly understand it. Because your version of living in the present is maybe a lot different than I think the way I've heard it before. The idea, the introduction of habits is so critical in this, because you said those habits are formed mostly, by the time we're 6 years old or something, and we're still living them. There's certainly a lot of habits we form when we're 21 years old and we're starting to work, or we're 25 years old and we have a family, or whatever the scenario is. And we do maintain those crazy habits for decades. And we keep adding on to that list. We just keep adding habits in, so that there are many nights, I think people can relate to this. We climb into bed eventually and we just replay the day of like I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. And all of these things are the things I do every single day. And I did them all methodically without even thinking about them, because that was my whole day of habits that I did. And my point by saying this is that, what did we do with our brain? If we were living all these habits, what positive things did we do with our brain to take advantage of our life, and to really be the creative person that we were born to be? Are you suggesting then in this scenario that the habit of gratefulness should be the dominant habit that guides us in the present? I mean, if we can move all those other habits to second place and adapt the habit of gratefulness, will that automatically put us on the path where everything is going to be better?
You're absolutely right. You know, you mentioned that when we are 6, certain basic habits are formed. It's like a software in a computer. So when you buy a computer, it has a software. So then you add to use the software and create so many other things. So the fundamental software is formed or before 6 o'clock, 6 years of age. So basically, all these habits are picked up by the software we have. The software which we are given before 6 basically forces us to live in the human body mode. So what is good for you? You are told, this is your name, this is your caste, this is your surname. You are separate than everybody else. What is when you obtain this degree, you are going to become rich, you are going to become famous. So we are parked in greed, and if you fail, nothing is going to happen. We are parked in fear, we are greed and ego. You become somebody. So we are given the habits which forces us to remain in the human body mode, which is basically human body knows that it is going to die, and it is constantly under fear. It is constantly looking for more food, more things. It is constantly parked in greed, and it is separate. It is parked in ego. So once all these software, which is given to us at 6, basically forces us to operate our life in the human body mode. And all these habits later on, we add to ourselves based on that software of human body mode. As a consequence, so all these habits are basically feeding our fear, greed, or ego. So as a consequence of that, our happiness is sacrificed, our peace of mind is sacrificed. We are parked in the stress mode. We are parked in losing things. We are always trying to achieve something to get a more money, more fame, more things. So all these habits are basically cultivated in the body mode.
See, I think what you just added, and I already said you put all these things in a box. I think you just added one more element there. Most of the habits we talked about, and that's a good thing. Most of the habits we talked about before were autopilot for physical activity. Okay. Driving in the car and not thinking about it, getting dressed. From the moment you get out of bed, you go through this ritual every day. You get to work wherever it is, and you go through the motions of doing what you do every day. Then you come home and everybody on and on and on. The day goes by on autopilot. day after day after day. Maybe Saturdays and Sundays are different, but Saturday has your autopilot mode and Sunday has your autopilot mode, and then you're back Monday through Friday again. But now you've introduced, since we're not using our brain on all those things, what our brain habits are. And now you're suggesting, since we don't have to park our brain, use our brain to drive and things, we can use our brain's habits, which are in the human mode of greed, fear, envy, ego. And so that's where our brain is going. So, how can I get this? Why don't I have this? Why does she have it and I don't have it? How can I get better than him? We're thinking about all of these things with our brain subconsciously. It's habits. And if you really just think about this whole scenario, if our body's on autopilot and our brain is on kind of autopilot and all these habits, boom, boom, the day is over, the week is over, the month is over. We're not at all in the moment. We're just utilizing all these habits to control every minute of every hour of every day. I mean, this does make sense, that when we do have a reality moment at some point, maybe again when we climb into bed and we say, where did the day go? Where did the last 12, 16 hours go? I think you've just explained it. We had autopilot for our brain, autopilot for our body, and it's yesterday, today, tomorrow, they're all the same. This is fascinating to me. I hope our audience is also intrigued by some of these thoughts. We're going to break this down further and see where this can take us and how to change it, most importantly, so that we can slow our world down and live in the present the way we really should. This is Stress-Free Living. We're going to be back in just a moment. Stay with us. All right. Your turn, everybody. Open up. If you have a quick comment, we ask you to keep them brief, but we'd love to hear from you.
So here's Doug.
Okay, Doug, go.
It's kind of interesting. This conversation is obviously very interesting. And I'm sitting here thinking about it. I even got myself feeling myself breathe a little bit ago. But our lives are, Patty and my lives are we think pretty, in habits, and we're in a mode here, but we're kind of retired. I've got a little part-time job. But things are going just pretty nice and everything. But the issue is all of a sudden, boom, oh my gosh, you mean Christmas is almost here? Where'd that happen? Or January is almost over with. It's like you don't realize it until all of a sudden it's like, ooh, boom, this has gone fast. You think you're going through, you think you got to kind of get it or in kind of a retirement mode, but all of a sudden it does catch up to you. And then so it is interesting to listen to all this. And I'm a habit type guy, that's for sure. And my wife is not, but it's still a good combination. So and I'll leave it at that.
Any other thoughts? Quickly, we'd love to hear from you. If not, we'll keep going with where we're at. There's a lot to already unfold from what we've talked about. But we do have 30 more seconds. I just heard one more commercial. If anybody has another thought, we can hear you out. Or question you want me to ask Ratanjit? All right, I guess we're on our own. We are back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Samich, with you as we're trying to take away one of the biggest stress areas of our life, and that is reflecting on why the world is spinning so quickly and why time is going by so quickly. And Ratanjit, I think you've already shared a lot of real interesting thoughts with us here today that we're trying to really understand how to move forward. We haven't been around that long, so I don't think I need to recap, because I kind of did a recap there at the end before we took the break. But we've decided that we're living in all of these habits, mentally and physically, and therefore at the end of any day or week or month, we look back on and we really don't think about what we did outside of those habits. Now, I'd like to take just a little sidebar on that, because we've talked in the show in the past about how creativity is so gratifying. How when we come up with a different idea or a different approach, when we create something, maybe it's words, or maybe we do something with our hands, a craft, or we build a table or something like that. There's so much fulfillment in doing something along those lines. And maybe there's a secret in there, because you don't do those things out of habit. You do those things with fresh, creative use of our talents, our skills. And those are the things that stand out. When we go through these rituals of habits, and yet we do something like this, a nugget of an idea, a nugget of a creation, a nugget of something we write or build or sing or whatever it is, they're like golden nuggets. Maybe that's excuse me, maybe that's part of the solution, is that the creative angle of how to get out of this mode of habits and utilize what is within us that we push to the back, we push to the side, because the habits are so easy to fall back on. What do you think?
So you're absolutely right. Creativity actually give us pleasure. Now, there are two levels of creativity. So when you are parked in the human body mode, your creativity comes from the talent you have learned and education you have gotten and skills you have acquired. So it remains basically limited to that level. So once you get into the oneness mode, when your brain is creative instrument, when brain is basically under the guidance of your human body mode, it has limited capability of creativity. It is limited to your talent, your education, your all these things. So once the same brain is controlled, it is operated by the energy which gives you life, the life force within you begins to control your brain, your creativity has no limits. And some of those creativities are wow moment. It gives you amazing, wow. So you know that creativity is not because of you, but somehow you got into the environment in the loop of that creativity, which was given to you by the force present within you. So it is important, and that creativity, the elevated creativity, the unlimited creativity, gives you the tremendous presence. So you begin to live in the present. That creativity keeps you in the present mode. Now, all that, it is very important that we have these habits, this software, which is given to us from 6 years of age, and we have been operating in the human body mode. So how do you convert into the oneness mode and get that extraordinary creativity, which is a gift of oneness mode? So that is very critical. So before you go there, you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I think that the creativity level, you just talked about being 2, and I really never thought of it that way. But the creativity level within ourselves seems to me a validation of our ego. Okay, because we're not connecting outside of our own space or outside of our own abilities. So, and For example, if I write a poem, okay, because I write a poem. If I do that within my own mind, within myself only, I tend to say, well, gee, that's pretty good. I did pretty good. I give myself credit for that. But that's never as good as when I let the world and the words come to me from outside. And at that point, my only job is to write them down. My only job is to take all of the beauty of the words around me and put them on a piece of paper. And that is so much, there's no comparison in the quality of the one version versus the second. So when we use our own creativity within ourselves, it's just almost a validation of our ego. It's almost just a validation of saying, wow, I did this, I created this, I made this craft, I wrote this, I have this idea. It's cheating ourselves on the creative abilities that we really have if we tap into the whole world that is begging us to use that creativity at that level. That's what I'm, again, I'm trying to change the words or summarize what I'm hearing from you. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you're right.
I never thought about the two levels of creativity that way.
You're absolutely right. So all of us have that force within us. And sometimes without knowing us, that gets activated under the circumstances, and we see this amazing creativity. So what happens is, it is like giving birth. So when you are confronted into a situation which becomes hopeless, and your talent, all the skills you have gotten, it is beyond that to find a solution. So once and the solution becomes so important, it is like saving somebody's life or making a difference to the society or some of those things, that forces that inner force to take charge and give you that creativity. So how do you have that as a habit? So continuously stay in that mode, which is very critical. So the secret of that mode we talked about is gratefulness. We'll talk about a little bit more about that. And before I do that, I'd like to have your comment.
Okay, thank you. And I think before you can make it a habit, I think there has to be a realization of the situation, that you have to understand what the situation before you look to a habit to to control it and to put it into a mode where you can use it all the time. So the revelation of this, and maybe this is just a revelation to me, maybe all of our listeners knew this a long time ago, but the idea of this two levels of creativity to me is very, very exciting. And I want to go back to my own personal experience. The number of poems that I have tried to write, maybe sometime hours, maybe sometimes days, that are only worthy of being rolled up into a ball and thrown into the basket, it is overwhelming. Okay, the number of efforts that is garbage is amazing to me. And now that I think about it, it's when I was in the human mode. It's when I was just trying to come up with forcing the words to work within me. And for those of us who give up on our creativity because we're just trying to do it ourselves, is maybe one of the biggest tragedies of life. Because I was, maybe it wasn't garbage, maybe it was decent, but it was far, far from what it could be if you allow the world to give it back to you. And so to understand that that's the reason why some of them are good and some of them are poor, is because I was in a oneness state, or I was in a me state, is really incredibly empowering. And I'm giving that example of poetry, but I mean, that example could be on anything in life, any creative opportunity of life, to think about ideas, to think about solutions, to think about, how to get where I want to be in my life. If I'm only using my own limited resources within me, I'm talking about 1/1,000,000% of what I could be using if I tapped into the world. So I think the reality of that, for those of us who take the time to say that really makes sense, opens the door for us to say, okay, how do I do that then? How do I tap into the oneness of creativity, the world of creativity, instead of limiting myself to what I'm doing? So let's take a second break here on the show. And when we come back, we'll ask Ratanjit, okay, now if this is the understanding, we have this reality, how do we do it? Are you ready for the answer? Ratanjit,
Yes,
you'll have the answer, right, when we come back?
sure.
Okay, good. Then we're going to take one more break here. This is Stress Free Living. Ray Samit, Ratanjit Sandhi with you today. So glad that you're here. Hoping that we are reducing some of the stress in your life. We'll be right back.
We have a new guest, and my Jogesh, are you there? Can you unmute and say a few words?
We saw his picture
yes,
earlier.
I'm very much there, and nice to see you, Mr. Ratanjit and Ray Samaj. Today I am on this show after many weeks, and
So you should
I'm
join
happy to
us
be back again.
every Saturday. You should join us.
Yes, certainly. Actually, this is a weekend. Saturdays are this evening time in India is like a shopping and going around time. Sometimes we miss, but I'll make it a point to join. Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
welcome you.
So any comments?
We have just a few seconds left for any comments. Anybody?
Yeah,
Questions?
yeah, real quickly,
One
Ray.
comment I feel or wanted to make, that when we are working in a group, in a project, I find people from diverse groups are there. Everyone wants to impress each other by showing his knowledge, his background impressions, and then impose on each other. So how to come out with a very good output in such situations?
Thank you. That may be its own show, but I appreciate the suggestion on that. We may go with next week on that whole show. Steve, you had something quickly?
Not so quickly. The reality is that we have things that we have to do every day, and that's sort of what you do. But a friend of mine who was brilliant said, and I think this changes the whole thing, it speaks to oneness, is don't ever say, I have to do something, I get to do something. So even if you're doing menial tasks, going shopping, you're not harvesting the thing, you go and you pick it up. You don't have to, you get to. And I think that changes my whole outlook whenever I'm having issues. And I think that speaks to writing poetry, that's when you're in the mode or when you're in this oneness mode. I hope that helps.
Yes. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi and Ray Samit with you again today. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us as we try to help each other to reduce the stress in our life that is brought on by so many different areas of our life that happen beyond our control, but some of them we can control, and some of those we can certainly control the impact that they have on us. Ratanjit, we've been spending today talking about trying to slow the world down. And again, as a bit of a summary, we know that's physically not possible. The world is going to be spinning out of control. But how do we respond to it? How do we control our own life and our own response to everything that's within us? We've spent a lot of time walking through the habits that we're in mentally and physically, and the way to break the pattern of living in those habits, which is the key. We've talked about tapping into creativity of the world around us as a substitute, as a welcome, like in the desert, an oasis in the desert from the habit lifestyle, to be able to grasp onto a moment of creativity and rescue us from the boredom of habits. And that's, I mean, just a concept that I really want to think about in my future hours here of how I can do that in my life and be fulfilled, not only with the gratification of not having to be stuck in a habit-filled life, but also with the joy and creativity and value that I could be giving to the world by doing that uniquely. So all of that is awesome. Okay. How do we make that happen, Ratanjit? How do we suddenly embrace this and do it, not just think about how great it can be?
This is a question which is the key of this entire show. So before we go there, we have to understand the key of habits, why the habits are formed. Our brain has a part which is called basal ganglia. So in order to make us more efficient in what we are doing, whatever we do repeatedly, 20, 30, 40 times consecutively, this basal ganglia picks it up and makes it into a habit. So all the habits, we do that without using our mind, creative mind. So habits come naturally. It does not use our mental capacity, and it spares the mental capacity, makes us more efficient in our life. So habits are a blessing to us, which is given to us, a special tool which is given to us to make us efficient. So now it is important to know that these habits, once they are formed, they become our asset, our liability. Depends on what we repeatedly did. If we consistently do think ourselves, we are living in fear, we become stressful. So it becomes a habit of living in the stress. So once you form a habit of being grateful, living in the present, you form a habit of doing that. So, and fundamentally, anything which you repeat consecutively, 30, 40 times, it becomes a habit. So once you discover that key, you can form a habit. So automatically, to replace those bad habits, all you have to do is form good habits. So automatically, it replaces the bad habits. So now we talked about being grateful. We talked about being creative. So creativity basically is an ego-oriented thought process. I am very creative. So generally, creativity begs a question in the worldly sense of having something unique, something which others cannot do. So you can only do this. I'm more creative than others. So if you remain parked in the creative mode, you are going to be driven by the ego mode. So convert that form into adding the highest value. So when you convert that thought process into adding the highest value, so example of that is, so you are traveling on the road and suddenly the weather is very bad and you find this car stranded on the side. So your instinct is we are having mental exercise. Should I drop? Should I stop? Should I help her or should I not help her? So somehow it dominated that you wanted to stop and help. So suddenly you found this older person whose tire is punctured and she cannot drive. So you do not have the expertise of changing the tire, but you do know how to change the tire. So although clumsy become very mediocre, you can change the tire, but now you have added very high value. So that moment will stay with you and gives you inner pleasure, much higher than if you were winning a gold medal and showing your creativity. So until this, when you get into the mode of adding the highest value, and once you form this habit of constantly thinking about how do I add the highest value, you suddenly force yourself from the body mode into the oneness mode. And the universal energy begins to operate. And once you are so pained and hurt and by thinking that I have to add the highest value, I have to save this person's life, I have to make a difference in this person's life. So the creativity inside of you automatically germinates and you are able to find a solution which normally you would not find. Whenever that happens, the feeling of gratefulness comes in you rather than feeling of ego comes in you. Ray?
So I think what you've given us is a path to follow, and a little bit of a history again here a second of today's show. We talked about the physical habits that take over us. And those, as you said, those are actually good. Those are designed to help our efficiency so that we don't have to waste our brain knowing how to get dressed every day. We don't have to use our brain during that process. It's a habit. We know how to do that. So our brain is free to do something else. But we also talked about how our brain tends to go to greed and fear and ego, because that's kind of the default habits that we have for that. And I think we can relate to that. Instead, if we use that brain to always be looking to ask that question, if we follow the path that says, if the brain is free, because the physical habits are there, instead of thinking about things for us, for our greed and our fear and our ego, which are totally unproductive, ask ourselves continuously that question: in this mode, how can I add the highest value? It's a very simple path to follow. We're driving to work. Okay, when I get there, how can I add the highest value today? We're thinking about a member of our family who's sick. How can I add the highest value? We're thinking about a problem that we are faced with, that we have to figure out a solution for. Okay, what will add the highest value to this problem for all people involved? Not just to help me, but to alleviate the problem for all people involved. You've given us a path of using the brain to be able to ask that question. And by doing that, we are going to use some creative resources, and the creativity to solve that problem. If we allow that to go to the world's creativity instead of what's limited within us, we will come up with the solution of how to add the highest value to whatever we're thinking about. I mean, you've laid out a path here.
So it is very important to know that when we operate in the human body mode, direction of everything is what is in it for me. So when we operate in the oneness mode, the direction is from me to others. So it is automatically, once we realize that, we park ourselves in this mode where we force ourselves to think what is going to benefit the others. So automatically, we incentivize us to operate in the oneness mode. So this is a switch happens. So all of us have the potential of operating in oneness mode or in the body mode. So body mode, we basically operating in oneness mode, we also can take care of our own body. So once we understand the human body is gifted to me, it is not me, then you understand the importance of eating right, living right, exercising right. So automatically that discipline comes in you, and it is all under the control of oneness mode. So sooner or later, so you have to switch to oneness mode, and once it becomes a habit, you automatically do everything in oneness mode. So direction of you is always to add value, adding value to yourself, adding value to your person next to you, adding value to your family, adding value to people you don't even know, adding value to environment. You are parked in that mode, and you are constantly going to be gifted with new challenges. How do I add value? So suddenly you are going to invite the universal energies to help you innovate the things you can't even think about. So ultimately, all this creativity flows through you, and you begin to add value. So Parkers make this as a standard habit of adding value. And whenever you add value, the end result is when you are in oneness mode, the feeling you get is gratefulness. When you are in the body mode, the feeling you get is ego. So it is difference. When you feel, oh, I did this, it's very nice. I have done this. You are operating in the human body mode. Once it is something which you appreciate coming out of you, you become a vehicle to produce that innovative idea. You become grateful, and you always are in the gratitude mode. And this is what constantly makes you park in the oneness mode, right?
So let's take the last couple minutes on the gratefulness, which we unfortunately haven't had a lot of time to talk about. Is the grateful habit, is that essential to be creative and to tap into the oneness of creativity? Or can we build the grateful habit after the fact? Can we be adding the highest value, asking how to do that, and then realizing after the fact that we need to have this gratefulness habit? Which one comes first?
If you are parked in body mode, your gratefulness is a decoration which you show the world, I'm grateful. It is ego-based. So it is only in the oneness mode, the true gratefulness, heartfelt, unconditional gratefulness happens. So ultimately, gratefulness is the feeling which you get when you add the highest value. And instead of when you are parked in oneness mode, the feeling you get is gratefulness. When you parked in body mode, the feeling you get is ego. So that is the clear difference.
So the grateful habit, the habit of gratefulness has to be there first before we can truly be creative and tap into the world's one capabilities. We have to have a gratefulness habit first.
They are interchangeable.
They are interchangeable. Okay.
Gratefulness cannot come until you are part in oneness. Oneness
Okay.
cannot come until you part in gratefulness. So they
Okay.
simultaneously happen.
Okay. So interesting. What a amazing revelation of thoughts here today that Ratanjit has shared with us. I am so grateful that we had this opportunity, and I hope that our audience enjoyed it even half as much as I did, because it was really, really enthralling and thought-provoking. We appreciate, Ratanjit, your time and your ideas, and we thank all of you, our guests here, that we can see their faces, and all those of you who we can't see you, but we know you're there. We hope that we have added value to your life. Remember, we're all playing the same game. We'll talk to you again real soon. All right. We are clear, and now we have the opportunity for all of you to open your microphones. Our radio show is over, but we are retaining this. I do want to let you know we are now on our Stress Free Living YouTube channel. We are keeping this post conversation. I just want to let you know that. Please don't limit your thoughts, but be aware that this is part of the YouTube show, this post show. So our comments here, everybody can enjoy those and hopefully learn from them as well. Please give us your thoughts.
So grateful to Ratanjit sir, as always, for reminding us time and again about gratefulness and being in oneness mode. It's a constant reminder which helps us to align ourselves. So grateful to him and to you, Ray, for getting out our unanswered queries on the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're grateful for you. Thank you, Sana. Who else has a thought?
So
Don't be shy.
here's my here's my thought. The last little bit of the conversation when Reggie was talking about helping. Did I lose you guys? It seems like my internet has stopped on me.
You're good. You're good. Good. Go ahead.
Anyway, the idea of doing something basically for yourself that feeds your ego. Oh wow, I didn't think I could do that, but I did. Now I did do that. I think that's very important. Also, the oneness is also very important. So I think both of those attitudes, helping yourself and helping others are good. Is that true? What you were saying, or did I miss that?
So you cannot take care of yourself in the ego mode. You basically indulge in you. What tastes good, what looks good, what is good for me. So you really start taking care of you once you realize that is a gift given to you in this human body mode. It is not you, but it is a gift. And it is only happens in the oneness mode that you really take care of this human body which is gifted to you.
Good.
Any other comments? So we everybody is so quiet. So Dr. Jagjit Singh ji, how do you have any comment?
No, everything is hello. Good morning to everybody. Everything is fine. No comments. We are moving in the right direction. That is what I feel. And I agree on most of the points with you, and I have nothing disagreement on that.
Thank you. Steve, you have a point? You have a question?
Not really. I love that everything, as she had said, is about oneness. But I think in terms of does the world go by, which was the original title, I think the reality of all of our lives is we have things that we have to do, and you can call them habits, but we have to go to work or take care of our family or clean the dishwasher. And we do that the best we can. And then when we have those, and try and make those moments as pleasant as possible for ourselves and others. And when we have the opportunity to do things creatively that help the world, I think we need to do that. So I think it's sort of being grateful, as you suggested, in everything we have, whether it's going to pick up groceries or, as I said, doing the dishes. We need to be grateful for the ability to do that. When we can be creative, when there's time for that, we should be.
So in the body mode, when we do these things, small things, generally they are generally considered menial. So we engage somebody else to do it. It's only in the oneness mode that we do things better. So there was a guy who was a janitor in a big corporation called Liberjol. And this guy, no matter what responsibility he's given, he would always do better. So unknowingly, he operated in oneness mode. So one day, through promotions, he became the CEO of that company. So it is always doing small things, mediocre things, mundane things in extraordinary manners. That only happens once you operate in the oneness mode. So otherwise, these things we do, they become headache and they become nuisance. Oh, I have to go and do this. Oh, I have to go and do this. Once you begin to understand that your purpose is not to do anything, but to add the highest value, you do everything in the proper way and you elevate things which ordinarily, which you do mediocre. So this is very important.
Thank you.
Deepa ji, you have any comment?
No, sir, I think, such, it's a wonderful reminder. And also it really put me today more in my thinking mode, like, more deeper conversations in terms of just being in the present, and the oneness mode really, I think it was so well articulated, and it really resonated with me so much more. Today, I think I'm going to stay on this thought for longer after the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please share this, have India listen to this recording on our YouTube channel, if we can.
Sure, certainly.
Yogesh?
A thought came to me that when the good sports person or players get the medals for their countries, tears roll in their eyes. So is that highest form of gratefulness? And they have prepared all these years to get that medal. And once they see the country flag going up, the tears come in their eyes. Then they say, we have done for our country. That motto is one of the highest, I think, value addition they do in their lives. So maybe that one should strive to do in a group project also.
See, what happens is, supposing somebody got 4 medals or 5 medals in a sport, and they brought credit to their country and all that. So afterwards, 4 days, 4 or 5 years passed by, and suddenly, initially, all the newspaper and magazines were having this person's picture, and he was famous. And after 4 years, or 10 years, he was visiting a grocery store, nobody recognized him. He felt, or she felt, very depressed. I have achieved so much and nobody notices me. So all our successes in life are gifted to us, given a platform to us to add more value. Now, instead of inundated by 4 medals, 5 medals, and having pride and this and that, he uses or she uses this platform to add more value, because this person has become visible and he has audio, he has a microphone to convey the message and more value to other people, that person would remain viable in our life. So our purpose is constantly, every success becomes nothing more than a platform to add more value. You have to remember that.
Very right, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have lost most of the people.
Yeah, I've had some technical issues here too. I got disconnected a couple of times. I'm glad to be back with you. So I apologize. I missed some of the post show. I'm sure it was wonderful, but I missed a lot of it being off of the Zoom call. I did want to mention to those of you that I made some notes. You had proposed some good topics, some good variations. Maybe the idea of groups, how to work better in groups. I love that. Also, the world isn't kind enough. One of the things that Steve said earlier, and does that affect what our expectations are and the way we approach the world and our habits? I thought that was a really interesting thought, and a few other ones. So we are going to come up with a different title. It won't be part 3, but we are going to continue some of this conversation next week and include some of the thoughts that you gave us, some of the ideas, so that we can continue advancing this. I think we made good progress today, but I think there's more that we can still do, especially with some of your ideas. So please feel free to join us next week as we continue the conversation. And if you have any thoughts in the meantime, I think you all have Ratanjit's email. Please feel free to give him any thoughts if some other things come to your mind this week and you want us to talk about those.